Hey there, what's up? We are back for another episode of the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. I'm your host, Erik Stenholm, along with my co-host, Joey Moore. We're back to discuss week 2, give you a preview for week 3, give you some best bets for next week, and of course, crown another Jack in the Bum of the Week. We're 2 weeks into the NFL season. That's the equivalent, Joey, of 10 NBA or NHL games, 20 MLB games. We're basically an eighth of the way through the season, so we can start to, make some proclamations for the season here. We have enough of a sample size to say, hey, I noticed this is a trend, or I'm thinking this team is actually better or worse than I thought. We'll start with the Niners, their game against the Rams. Obviously, the main takeaway from most people who watch that game is going to be the Niners might be the best team in football. It's between them and Dallas and probably Philadelphia right now. But your main takeaway from that game, I gather, even as a Niners fan, is, hey, the Rams are actually pretty surprising.
Yeah, Rams aren't going to be a pushover. They were impressive. I didn't know what to make of last week, going into Seattle and winning pretty convincingly, especially in the second half. But that carried over. Seattle's clearly not a bad team. They obviously had a big win. They're good. Sean McVay's a damn good coach, and I know he's lost a bunch of games in the regular season, at least to the Niners and his buddy Kyle Shanahan. But their game plan, I mean, they were on fire. Puka Doncic, he's pretty good.
That's a good one.
I'm not going to take credit for that. I heard that I saw it online somewhere.
That's a old school. That Chris Berman would have had that if he was still doing it.
Or Luka Nakua. Pick whatever one you want. He's like damn good. Like, boy, when they get Cooper Kupp back and they found a way to use Tutu Atwell, who's been completely irrelevant since they drafted him. They punted Cam Akers and replaced him with Kyron Williams, who's I think the scrimmage touchdown leader so far. And by the way, Matthew Stafford, when healthy, is pretty freaking good. He looks elite again. The most impressive thing is their offensive line, which has been pretty terrible, held up big time. I mean, the Niners got no pressure unless they blitzed Fred Warner a couple times. They're going to score on people, the Rams. They're going to score on people. Their defense is pretty young. But yeah, I mean, I like to pump Stafford's tires today, but he did have, a couple. The first pick wasn't his fault, but the second one, It's right. It's right to Lenore. I mean, it's a terrible route by Van Jefferson, who's kind of been benched by the Rams, but the Rams are not a pushover. I wouldn't be surprised. They got a very interesting Monday night game next week in Cincinnati, especially if Burrow doesn't play, which even if he does, they look in shambles right now. Rams are not bad.
Yeah. And I think, going into that game, probably looking at that game on the schedule in the offseason, you figured, Niners, big favorites there, 10-point favorites. They're gonna crush them. After week 1, we were like, oh, okay, maybe the Rams are pretty good. Maybe Seattle's not that good. After week 2, we're saying Seattle is good. The Niners are one of the best teams in football, and the Rams are not a pushover. So the NFC West has already shifted a little bit. I think you got to be happy how the Niners came out of that game. 7-point win, no significant injuries, really good start through 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean, you said no significant injuries. Only one I can think of is Ambry Thomas, but he's, decent player, but replaceable. Yeah, I mean, hard to ask for much more than 30 points back-to-back road games before you come home. Short week against a Saquon-less New York Giants team. I think the last time I looked, the line was minus 10.5. But Giants figured something out. I know it was against Arizona, but they figured something out at the second half of that game, so we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I mean, as a fan, I don't like predicting like they're going to win such and such games or win the Super Bowl or anything, just because I don't want to be sad and wrong. I'll just be sad. But like my gut tells me, if I was a Niner fan, if this team is healthy, they're the best team in football. They really are. I mean, Dallas is right there. I mean, Dallas has been equally as impressive. I'm not the biggest Dak guy, obviously, but I mean, their defense looks even better than it did last year, and their defense was ready to win a Super Bowl.
They're so similar right now, the Niners and Cowboys. Elite defense, quarterback who's only going to be asked to mostly manage the game at this point, elite running game, weapons on the outside. I mean, you got first ballot Hall of Famers in Trent Williams and Zach Martin. I mean, really similar teams, and I think they're on.
I think they've even distanced themselves from Philly a little bit. I don't want to. Philly, it looks like losing both coordinators. Something is just not as perfect as it was last year. I mean, they're still damn good. But like, yeah, as you know, we'll talk about it. I mean, if the Vikings didn't turn the ball over for it, I mean, they probably win that game.
Yeah, devastating loss for the Vikes on Thursday. To me, it was just essentially a redo of week 1, but against a much better opponent. 4 turnovers in that game, 3 fumbles, one by Jefferson that was essentially going to be a touchdown or down at the 1, fumbles it out of the end zone, so we lost the possession. They go down and they score a field goal right before the end of the half. So a 10-point swing there. A fumble on a punt return where our guy had broken a few tackles and gotten all the way to the Philly 33 when he fumbled. So to me, that's another 3 to 7 points off the board. Vikings, as you and I were texting at halftime, they could have been up 28-10 at the half, and at worst 21 or 17-10 at the half. It was just an absolute disaster on the special teams situation. I mean, yet another fumble by a punt returner. That's back-to-back weeks. It's a devastating start to the season for the Vikings because both games were right there to win. I did think Cousins was fantastic. I think he's had a good start to the season. I think the turnovers, I would say, of the 4 turnovers that he's committed, only one has been, just a bad throw, and that was the second one in the Tampa Bay game. But, man, tough start for the Vikes. I really think Philly was there for the taking. I think you said that all throughout the game was like, hey, this Philly team on a short week after not playing that well in New England, they were ready to
Minnesota.
Give that game.
I was texting bringing the heat. I mean, they were like, the biggest reason why Philly was so good, I think even more than Jalen Hurts, even though he was fantastic, is like I've said it a million times. They have the Avengers blocking for him. I mean, it's just a force field of just protection around an already, very good quarterback. Minnesota was getting there. I mean, a lot, and
a lot of different looks, which is great. We didn't have that last year. Flores was throwing everything at him.
Yeah, and just the turnovers. Yeah, the Jefferson one was that's a touchdown and it's going the other way. That was a big one. But just last thing on the Niners, their defense is equally as good as some of the teams they've had in the last few years. Their offense is a lot better. I mean, it's the best offense I've ever seen them have in my lifetime, honestly. To put up 30 straight games on the road, like
49ers for sure, right? I mean,
just throwing the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, like they had, that era was like Crabtree. I think Vernon Davis at his peak was just as good as George Kittle, just not as a good a blocker. But yeah, Anquan Bolden, Crabtree, and McCaffrey's better than Frank Gore. I mean, I love Frank Gore, but McCaffrey's a better player. Yeah, but Purdy missed 3 touchdowns. That's the thing. They scored 30 points, and it's a Purdy. I swear they ran the same play Jimmy missed Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl. It was the same post to the field goal, and it was overthrew him. And I'm like, that's a touch. And Deebo Samuel, for all plays, for being as good as he is, never gets open down the field on a big go route or post route. He's like the best gadget guy you've ever seen. But yeah, running the route tree is not his thing. But he beat the corner, and Purdy well overthrew him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's encouraging. And yeah, next couple of games against Giants and Arizona, and then the big one, Dallas comes to Santa Clara on Sunday Night Football.
And I believe you follow that up with a trip to Minnesota. Will Kirk Cousins?
I think that's 2 weeks after. We go to Cleveland.
Cleveland, then Minnesota. A question I have for you: will Kirk Cousins be the starting quarterback for the Vikings in that game? I say 90% yes, probably 95% yes, but a lot of rumors on podcasts, on ESPN, on NFL Network about the Jets thinking about making a trade for him. We put out a poll on our Twitter account, and I think it ended up being over 50% said yes, the Jets should do it. It would be a good trade for a first-round pick. 40% said Vikings should absolutely say yes, and then 10% said that the Jets should say no. So it was the majority of people said it would be a good trade.
Drive him to New Jersey in a limo for a first-round pick. Not because he's not worth it, but just a
35-year-old QB.
He's clearly not going to be on the team next year.
Yeah.
I mean, they said, play it out. We're not extending you. Like we want to kind of turn it over, reset our cap. And so the thing is, I don't think the Jets. I wouldn't do it if I was the Jets because, like, what are you going to do? Trade a first rounder and then Rodgers comes back potentially if he doesn't retire, and you still don't have an offensive line to protect him, and he'll be 40.
And I think the events of that game against Dallas kind of show, hey, even with, a top 12 quarterback, the jump from Zach Wilson, who's 32nd, let's just say it, the jump from him to Cousins is huge. I don't think it's enough for them to like win that Dallas game. I mean, whatever points they got in that game were not because of Zach Wilson and not because
I think the Jets should trade for somebody. I just would not give up the first round. I would try as hard as possible.
Yeah, trade like a fourth for Brissett or something. That's what I was looking at was, someone competent, somebody like that, but don't mortgage the farm. I personally don't think, unless you could get a one, that the Vikings should trade Cousins. The division is bad. I think we can still win the division, especially if we can get off the schneid this week against the Chargers. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Philly, even on your best, it's tough how it went because I was like, you guys, arguably should have won the game. Maybe Tampa's not terrible. They're 2-0. I know they beat, beating the Bears isn't like a trophy, but they're not. Again, just if the Vikings just keep the ball to themselves,
we're 2-0.
Yeah,
yeah.
They get the Chargers, who never win this week.
It's the opposite of last year, where we didn't deserve to win maybe 8 of the games that we won. We went 13-4 this year. We probably should be 2-0, and because of stupid turnovers and a couple really untimely calls going against us, we're 0-2, but we march forward. Monday Night Football tonight. They went with the doubleheader. We'll get to the games in a moment, but I just want to get your opinion. Do we like 2 Monday Night Football games at the same time? Because there's 2 schools of thought here, and I think we're on opposite sides. I knew you'd hate it.
Like, there's something special about being the only game everyone in America is watching. And as I was texting you, I hate the multiple screens. Fun fact, I actually did try the trial of Sunday Ticket Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like watching 4 games one time, like the 10 a.m. window for the Niners. Wasn't a huge fan. I don't know if it's my eyesight, like it's just way too distracting. I like the fact you could pick any game you want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I didn't have Sunday Ticket, I'd be stuck with Raiders Bills until the Niners, and that's it. But like the four, like today, even the 2 screens, like they don't take up the whole TV. I've decided. You remember video games years ago? Like if you played Tony Hawk or like Call of Duty with your buddy, like they split it and it covered the whole TV.
Yeah.
Like top and bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, at least the way YouTube does it, is it's like left screen, not going top to bottom, and then right. Like, you sent me a picture and I was like, yeah, I don't know. And plus, you only have, I don't know. I thought I was going to love it. I thought I was just going to like.
So I'll say I think that the 4 screens is overkill. Like, first of all, when you first do it, you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. I would say after 5 or 10 minutes, you're like, hey, I'm having trouble paying attention to what's going on in certain games because it's just too much information. I think I've decided that I'm a huge fan of Red Zone. I will watch Red Zone for every minute of the year that the Vikings aren't playing. And then I love the 2 box. I don't like the 4, but like the 2 that we just had with Monday Night Football, that is awesome. I think that's a good look. You can kind of.
I'd like it better if you could make one of them bigger, which maybe you can. I just haven't figured that out.
No, I haven't seen that yet. That is a good point. If you could say, there's a premium Monday night game, Bills Chiefs or something, and then you move like, Broncos Browns to the bottom right. Something.
Yeah,
like
not a 50-50, but like a picture-in-picture, like a little like. Yeah.
Come on, folks.
The thing is, I don't know. Maybe I'm an outlier, even for being a obviously big football fan. I don't even like Red Zone. Like,
you said this last year, and I couldn't disagree more. I'm a Red Zone truther.
I don't like my number one pro for the Sunday Ticket. This one, yesterday, was I wanted to watch the Seattle Detroit game, so I was able to watch that, and I ended up, once I kind of messed with it for a little bit, I put that game on. like the whole TV, like that. Like that's cool. Like that, I do really like, because that was better than watching Buffalo and Vegas. But like, yeah, I'm never gonna do it when like the Niners are playing. I guess the Niners play Thursday and the Raiders play Sunday night this week. So locally, there's no regional stuff. 10 to 10 a.m. and a 1 o'clock window. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
The games tonight, though, we got to get into those.
I don't know. I just want to watch a game.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching the two side by side. I saw when Bryce Young had that fumble that eventually led to points for the Saints. That play was happening at the same time as TJ Watt was sacking Deshaun Watson. I thought that was kind of cool, but then eventually you do have to make a decision like, hey, I'm going to pay attention to this game more than the other. I think the game most folks watched tonight was Steelers Browns. Those who listen to this podcast hopefully bet on the Steelers as we recommended last week. They come away with the win. Crazy game that I think mostly came down to the Browns being completely defeated after the loss of their best player. Devastating injury for Nick Chubb. That's now back-to-back Monday Night Football appearances this season that have led to one of the best players in football having a season-ending injury. Brutal to watch. Tough situation for the Browns coming off of a big win against Cincinnati. They lose at Pittsburgh. They lose their best player. Deshaun Watson, again, I would say did not look anywhere near what he looked like 2020 and before with the Texans. It's not looking good there for Cleveland. And I think, like you said, after the first game, Niners-Steelers, the Steelers actually are a pretty good team. They just ran into a juggernaut in week 1.
Most impressive thing is like Cleveland, like you said, does have very good offensive line. I know they lost their right tackle last week for the season, but still, like every one of them is pretty good. They got abused. I think Pittsburgh finished with 6 sacks, maybe more. TJ Watt looks like, the defensive player of the year. I guess you could put him and Micah Parsons, but watching, him abuse Colton McKivitz against the Niners for 3 sacks, and then this one, he had a touchdown. When healthy, he is dominant. Yeah, Cleveland. Boy, oh boy, Deshaun. He's a shell of himself. He had a couple nice throws I saw to Amari Cooper, but he's just consistently just not good enough. I think he finished maybe like 53% passing.
When you're getting paid, 50 something million a year, you have to be one of the top 6 or 7 guys in the league, and he's not even in the top half right now. It's a real tough situation.
55%.
Yeah. And after last week, which granted it was in bad weather, but last week he was even worse. So really tough situation.
And last week, I know it's like Cincinnati. His completion percentage for this season, I know it's only been 2 games, is 55.2.
That's Tebow level, man. That is not good.
And on top of it, I guess they voted him a team captain. Maybe he's a he's a locker room guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just weird.
Yeah. If you had to pick a game of the week this week, I think we definitely go Seattle-Detroit, 37-31.
Like I said, Sunday ticket. That's why.
Yeah. We after last year, which was also week 2, Seahawks at Lions, that was high scoring. We expected this one to be really high scoring, and it was. The Goff pick 6 changed everything because I thought Detroit was going to run away with that game. The pick 6 brought Seattle right back into it. And then, to the Lions' credit, they were basically, dead to rights there in the fourth quarter. They go down there, they score, they get it to overtime where Geno responds after his big blunder at the end of the fourth quarter. Seahawks offense looks, legit with those 3 wide receivers with Kenneth Walker. Lions defense, I got to say it's a little sus right now. What did you take out of that game?
So, for fans of the podcast who listen to our previews, obviously I'm no bigger Detroit fan outside, not in the state of Michigan, calling them the most rootable team in the NFL. But before the season, I mentioned this game last year specifically, like potential playoff team last year. Obviously I think Seattle is really good. You have that game at home again for the 2nd straight year. Like, for me to take you to that next level, I'm not even talking like top of the NFC, but like clearly the best team in your division. Like, you have to win some of these games. You know, you look back at, you know, week 1, it's really cool kickoff game. Like, everyone loves it, but it took, I mean, Kansas City's 2 best players, 1 future Hall of Fame. I mean, Chris Jones is right there. I mean, no Travis Kelce is huge, and it took just an abomination effort from Kadarius Toney to lose that game. And you come home, I mean, biggest game at Ford Field maybe ever.
Crowd was nuts for that
and
game.
You have to win that game. I mean, like, you know, I thought, I mean, the game specifically, yeah. I mean, Seattle's offense looked like I thought they'd look. Geno was a lot better. Especially other than that sack he took at the end.
Oh,
I thought Detroit should have been more aggressive. That after they got the sack and then returned, like, I mean, they just kicked a field goal, but I thought they could have been more to get a touchdown. But the pick 6 was old Jared Goff. I'd like to think he's a new Jared Goff, because he was closing in top 1 or 2 on like the all-time record for like most attempts without throwing a pick, and then he throws that.
It was like 18 passes away from the record.
I mean, if he got 3 touchdowns, I mean, he playing well. But like Detroit, like you said, their defense can't stop a nosebleed. You have to win that game. You could look back, NFC conference opponent, you could look back and that could be a tiebreaker. I mean, I think Minnesota obviously turn it around. I mean, they're not going to go like 4-13. Like, they're going to be a good team. Like the Packers, like, I mean, they might be decent. I didn't see the end of it, but they blew it to Atlanta, and they're up. I think they're up 12 when I saw on Sunday, and then blew it. But like, yeah, I mean, Detroit.
That was a massive missed opportunity for them.
Game.
Yeah, huge missed opportunity. I think this was a chance, given that the Vikings, Packers, and Bears all lost. They could have really separated themselves, and they didn't. I think the biggest story, at least before the Chubb injury, to come out of week 2 was Cincinnati in free fall. The Baltimore-Cincy game. Obviously, Lamar looked great. The Ravens looked super buttoned up early in the season, like they always do under Harbaugh. Still one of the best coaches in the entire league. But, man, are the Bengals cooked? Like, they're 0-2, but the eye test says it's worse than that. It's not like, oh, they've had a slow start. It's like, no, if you actually watched their 2 games, like, even if Burrow is 70% or is slightly injured and may miss next week, that doesn't excuse everything. That team looks awful right now. Crisis time in Cincy, or are you just going to wait and see?
This year is different than last year. I know they started 0-2 last year. Kind of for the same reasons. Like, Burrow misses camp. He had an appendectomy. It wasn't like a, muscle types. Like, he's not going to get a second emergency appendectomy like in October. And they lost. I think they lost to Pittsburgh week 1 last year. I don't know who they lost week 2. But I know they started 0-2, but I was like, okay, they'll figure it out. This year, you said this is different. Number 1, they lost 2 home games, 2 in-division games. That's as bad as it gets. Your quarterback, who's now hurt again with an injury that if you don't have him just sit for like at least a month, like, is going to be there all year. Their offensive line has never been that good. And if Burrow can't move at all, he's a sitting duck. I don't care how good he is. And the criticism, like you've always been saying on Zach Taylor, like, okay, when Joe Burrow's not beep, boop, 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 slicing and dicing, what do we got? Like, it's kind of if you watch games, turn back into just throw the ball down the sideline to one of their elite receivers and hope they make a play. Well, that's hard to win, especially when you're playing good teams. I'm not going to say Cleveland is everything, but like the Ravens, I was never the highest guy on the Ravens just because I just never think Lamar's going to play 17 games. But Zay Flowers is a player,
yes.
Sucks they lost J.K. Dobbins, but I mean the Ravens are a well-run operation, and when Lamar plays, they win a damn good amount of their games. Yeah, I mean, I
believe Lamar is 45-16 as the starter. Like, I saw that
pretty
stat,
good.
and I was like, that's quite good.
Pretty good. Yeah, Ravens are 2-0. I mean, so Cleveland's now Cleveland and Pittsburgh are both 1-1 then.
It's an uphill battle for Cincy.
If he doesn't play Monday night against the Rams, they're going to lose.
Yeah, that game opened Cincy -7, -7.5, and now I just looked. It's Cincy -1. They dropped it 6 points.
I don't even know who their backup is.
It's former Viking draft pick Jake Browning, who has never completed.
I was going to say, is it still A.J. McCarron?
I think McCarron and Catherine Webb are on an island somewhere. I would think.
Is Brent Musburger invited?
So, yeah, Cincy and Free Fall, we'll get to them a little bit in the Jack and the Bum of the Week. They're definitely a candidate. A couple other big games we got to recap. We already talked about the Jets and Dallas. I mean, Micah Parsons is a beast. Dallas is top 5 in the power rankings right now. I do want to talk about Kansas City, Jacksonville. So 2 things for me coming out of that game. Number one, that was way more low scoring than anybody thought. And I think that's because Kansas City's defense is for real. I think when Chris Jones is healthy, that unit is good enough to support, the Kansas City offense dropping off a little bit. I am worried about that wide receiver issue there because Kelsey was back. He didn't play his normal number of snaps, but Mahomes has nowhere to go with the ball if Kelsey is not doing his normal bullshit. It's like, man, that is a tough situation.
I said that so many times with Russell Wilson in Seattle. There's bullshit that's happening. Like just Russ bullshit. Now Russ bullshit is entirely different meaning. But yeah, Kelsey, Mahomes running around and there's somehow like a gigantic 87 wide ass open. I don't get it.
It's hard to understand too because he's 33, 34
Who else are you
years
covering?
Old.
Like you said with the receiver. Who else are you covering?
Like, do you really need to?
You don't need to cover Tony. He covers himself.
Sky Moore, no.
You know your receiving core is bad when you're like, damn, I really miss Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, damn.
I mean, Jacksonville was awful in that game, and they still almost came away with it. I mean, Kansas City won relatively handily, but there were times in that game where if Lawrence, I think he had 6 passes that traveled into the end zone, and none of them resulted in touchdowns. It's like really tough situation there for Jacksonville, given that I think Kansas City is still really trying to figure things out, and they couldn't come away with it. But
those AFC teams better strike the Chiefs when they're leaking oil a bit, because if they do, trade deadline comes. I know the receiver that everyone was thought was going to get moved was Mike Evans with his contract, and if Tampa was terrible, but who knows? They're 2-0. Maybe they don't.
He looked great.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's in division, but I thought if the Chargers if their wheels on the bus just rolled off a cliff, maybe Keenan Allen gets moved. I don't know, but I mean, the Chiefs, they're going to go after a receiver if they get one, and
might as well get.
The scary
Juju
part
from
is
the
their
Patriots.
defense is their defense is really good.
Yeah.
That's
why I come out of the game not as worried about them. I am more worried about their wide receiver situation, but I think the defense is good enough to where, say that defense or that offense drops from 1st to 8th overall, I think the defense can make up for it, and I still think they'll win that division.
Who is available? Antonio Brown.
He's available, and he now calls his Sunday program on his Twitter feed CTE Sundays. So he's leaning into it. I don't know if you saw his tweet the other day. I mean, he's like, dude, I have CTE. Like he's like, join me for CTE Sundays. I was like, wow, okay, we've reached that point in the Antonio.
Brown all experience. Those things you see, especially I remember. I haven't watched them in a while, but those MTV True Life, and it'll be living with, whatever. That's Antonio Brown. He's just out there living with CTE. Follow me in my adventures with a brain disease. I'm a little nuts. Follow me.
See what happens.
Next
See
week,
my
I'll be playing the NFL for the Chiefs.
Then the week after that, I'll throw a literal bag of dicks at a police officer. That's our boy Antonio Brown. I hope he's doing okay out there. One more game before we get to your Jack and the Bum of the Week. The Miami-New England game. 2 notes I had. Belichick is sliding down the coaching ranks. I really just, year after year without Brady, I just don't see anything from him that says that the majority of what happened over that 20-year stretch wasn't, it was Brady the whole time. And then
he better start winning.
Yeah, I mean, it's not happening now. This is the first 0-2 start for the Pats since 2000. I mean, that shows you how long they've been relevant. And then the other thing, 2 different viral moments for McDaniel in that game. I freaking love that guy. We say it almost every podcast.
I mean, I love him. Absolutely love him.
He does that interview that's so nonchalant with Melissa Stark during Sunday Night Football, and then the camera pans to him running to the locker room, and he purposely sprints as fast as he can away from the camera, looking back at it like it's Saw. And I was like, this dude is having fun. His players respect him. He's legitimately funny, and he's coaching an offense that is just on a whole nother level from the rest of the NFL. So fun seeing Tua sling it around like that. Mostert just running wild again at age 31. McDaniel is just cooking right now.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be like Belichick, be like an absolute drill sergeant and just be a sourpuss walking around the facility all the time. Like, you can be a dominant NFL head coach and like kind of be like, pleasant to be around. I think most of them aren't. I think most of the good coaches are not fun to be around. I think Andy Reid probably is fun to be around. I'd like to eat a burger with him. Maybe
And some chicken nuggets.
Yeah. I picture Kyle Shanahan being like a dick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know the players like him, but I feel like, don't talk to me. I'm doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Mike could be like, yeah, you want to go watch Step Brothers? That's what I think. That's what I think McDaniel could be.
He's got to be the front runner for Coach of the Year, you would think, right?
Well, I think Sean McVay's got. I mean, if they win, because I think they're terrible.
Right.
Miami is kind of, I was going to say, like, them and the Ravens, like, I think they're really good. My predictions are like, these quarterbacks are not going to play 17 games.
Right.
If they do, Miami could be in the Super Bowl.
If they do, Tua could win the MVP. Right now, the top 3 favorites for MVP, tied at first at plus 650, are Mahomes and Tua, and second is Lamar through 3 weeks. So it's like, those guys stay healthy, high ceiling, right?
I mean, yeah, Miami's offense, like, looks like they're playing a different sport.
It's got some Greatest Show on Turf vibes, right? With the
they are so fast.
Receivers. Yeah.
But, like, again, Belichick, like, he can take away your fastball. Like, he can, kind of make it into a little bit of a trench warfare. And, like, Miami can play that way too.
Tua had 40 yards, or Tyreek Hill had 40 yards. Didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, Miami's really good. Really good. I know the Chargers are maybe not like, I mean, the Chargers are we'll talk about them. And I think the Patriots aren't great, but they're coming home. They get Denver at home in their home opener. So 3-0.
Coming up in picks of the week.
Yeah, I mean, Miami and maybe Kansas City stumbles. Like, maybe the Jets without Rodgers. I think Buffalo's going to slide. Who's to say what they look like when they're not playing the Raiders? I mean, Miami could potentially win the division and be a 1 seed and
absolutely. Especially with the way
I'd like to see how the AFC shakes out when Mahomes has to not play the game at home.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Not to say
he wouldn't win it, because he probably, I mean, obviously he could, obviously. But like, this whole thing, like, same thing, the Brady thing, like, oh, you play the regular season, and once again, it's like you win a game and you're hosting the AFC Championship every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I get it, you earn it, you win, you do that in the regular season, but it's like, can you guys, like,
yeah, we don't need another
the Chiefs
Tennessee.
Have to go to, like, Buffalo.
We don't need Tennessee being the 1 seed and getting rolled. We need a legitimate 1 seed like Miami with a healthy Tua and a full slate of options. That would be pretty sick to watch. I don't think Miami has hosted a playoff game since God knows when. Maybe the Marino era. It's been a long time. So that's the week 2 recap. We're going to get to your Jack in the Bum of the week here. Ton of candidates. Number 1 for me on the list was Justin Fields. I don't know if you have been on TikTok recently, but the Bears fandom has completely given up. They're out after 2 weeks.
I would be.
Through the preseason, they were like, Fields is a dark horse MVP candidate. Through week 1.
Like, I would really like to know who said, like, who? Like, who?
Through week 1, they're like, hey,
unless that person said that on Antonio Brown's, like, CTE show, like,
this is,
some takes are just like, wow, that's bold. But some like, shut up. Shut up.
I mean, we called this from 2021, from the draft, from the very beginning. I mean, we could see this coming a mile away. I think for the first time, the Bears fans have actually accepted their fate. They wanted to blame the old GM. They wanted to blame Eberflus, the new coach. They wanted to blame the offensive coordinator last week. After this week, I think everybody is off the Fields bus. It's only 2 weeks, but I mean, it's been 2 years and 2 weeks. I think the Justin Fields project needs to come to an end here pretty soon. That game in Tampa, probably the worst of his career. Multiple videos I saw one was from the PFF guys, and then one was just a fan edit of showing what he's looking at as a quarterback back there. And there are 3 guys wide open, and he just tucks it and runs. And it's rough.
You ever watch the former Niners QB JT O'Sullivan on YouTube?
I have seen. Yeah,
I love to watch those. I watch them all the time when he talk about Trey Lance, and he would kind of say the same thing. Like, here's this guy, here's the scheme. Like, Shanahan sends this guy in motion. It reveals its zone coverage. Like, this should be open. And he snaps the ball, takes his drop, and he's looking in the last place he's supposed to be looking. Like, I don't know what he's looking at. Like, here's this guy, wide ass open. Like, the coverage, same thing with Justin Fields. It's like, Justin Fields played Ohio State. Like, I know he had an all-star team around him, especially the receivers. But like, did you ever have to think on the field where guys just open all the time? And you had just a great offensive line. Yeah.
Played against bad opposition. I mean, slugfest Big Ten opponents who are designed to stop the run, and he's just throwing all over them. Yeah, so the Fields experiment is basically over at this point. One other candidate for Jack in the Bum of the Week, Broncos DB Kareem Jackson, back-to-back weeks that he's going to get fined for a helmet-to-helmet hit. I saw the one last week on Jacoby Myers, very, brutal hit, but it's a one-time occurrence. You're like, okay, maybe he can just get away with the fine. He did the exact same thing this week to Logan Thomas, knocked him out cold, one of the more vicious hits I've seen in a long time. Back-to-back weeks where he made a dirty play. That's a guy who, I don't know, super sus right there, going out to injure opponents back-to-back weeks. You could tell his teammates were like, dude, what are you doing? And by the way, they're 0-2. Both of his penalties led to touchdown drives for the opposition. So, I mean, that's a guy that you can blame as much as anybody, Wilson, Peyton, whoever, for that 0-2 start for the Broncos. Sean McVay is on this list because he went for the cover, kicking a field goal as time expired to cut it to 7.
Absolute boner.
I have not seen an NFL coach play for the cover like that in a long time. Pretty shameless, but I mean, you
like,
Sean.
I don't know. I go back and forth. I'm like, why wouldn't you, right? Like, you're not going to win. You might, why not? I don't know. Like, stats are stats. Like, people are going to look back and be like, oh, a 30-23 loss is better than 30. I mean, but then the other part, I'm just like,
really? Yeah. And then 2 other Jack in the Bum candidates, Bengals offense, absolute tire fire, and then the Vikings because of their ridiculous turnovers, 4 more last week. But you're going to go with a completely different candidate, someone that you've been wanting to put on this list for a long time.
Yeah, this week's Jack in the Bum of the Week is Chargers head coach Brandon Staley, because I don't know what he does. The offense, run by Kellen Moore. Brandon Staley has nothing to do with that. Brandon Staley's defensive guy, and they let Ryan Tannehill, who could not move the ball at week 1, go up and down the field against your defense. I mean, they have players. They have Joey Bosa. Like, I know Khalil Mack's a bit of a shell of himself, but he's there. I mean, they're paying J.C. Jackson $1 billion. They're, Derwin James is a really good player. Like, they have players.
Eric Kendricks. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. They're I like their other corner too, Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, he got cooked. But the real reason why he's on this list is because then he gets into an argument with a media person post game, like kind of questioning, like, oh, hey, like your defense, like scheme, not really. And he's just like, was all being a dick. Like, dude, like, what do you do? Like, you cannot be a defensive guy in 2023 as a head coach and your defense be terrible. Like, maybe Mike Tomlin can somehow get away with it, but his defenses have never been terrible.
No.
Maybe they're not as good as like they usually are, but like, some guys like kind of like John Harbaugh, John Harbaugh was a special teams guy. Like you kind of run a tight operation. The Chargers are not a tight operation.
No.
The only thing that's tight is their wallets because they're cheap. They won't hire a real coach because Sean Payton wanted to coach them. Living in LA doing the Fox thing. I mean, who wouldn't want to coach Justin Herbert? Like, no, we're going to keep Brandon Staley.
Spanos wouldn't shell out the money for it.
I mean, the Chargers could easily go to Minnesota and lose, and I don't know the schedule after that, but I mean, they could be staring 1-4. And once again, Chargers get a Charger, and I wouldn't be shocked if Brandon Staley gets replaced mid-season, potentially by Kellen Moore.
He's on the hottest of hot seats 2 games into a season that I can remember in a long time. I think most of the reason is he was brought in to replace Anthony Lynn, and Anthony Lynn was this guy who just did not project confidence, sloppy teams. He's one of those rah-rah leaders, a great person, a great leader of men, but an absolute slop fest of a head coach. His teams committed a lot of penalties. He had no idea what to do at the end of the game. They bring in Brandon Staley. They bring in Justin Herbert. You're like, oh, man, this is going to be just a juggernaut, especially if that Staley defense really comes through. This is his 3rd season in a row of just – it's the same as Anthony Lynn. It's the same exact thing. The Chargers are going to Charger, and there's nothing that he can do about it.
I think the question that ticked him off from the reporter was like, do you think like last year's playoff, debacle is bleeding into this season? And he's like, no. He's like, no, stupid question. I don't think he said that, but he's just like, super like why would it come into this year? He was like asking the reporter, I'm just like, okay, dude, stop a nosebleed with a defense. He's getting fired.
There is no doubt. And I mean, they have taken most of those odds off the board. You can only do it at offshore sports books where you bet on the first coach to be fired, but they've taken it off the board everywhere because they're like, hey, there's only one guy right now who's probably going to get fired before the season reaches the halfway point. So there's Brandon Staley, Joey's Jack and the Bum of the Week for week 2. Let's go over to my You Like That picks of the week. We're 5-4-1 through 2 weeks. Last week we got there with Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football, with Kansas City -2.5. And if you listened to us early enough, you got Atlanta +1.5, and that got you there. That Atlanta line eventually moved to -3. We lost on Philly -7 with the Vikings backdoor cover. We were really close to getting that one. And then Denver -3, which was just an insane game. They were up 21-3. They then got a Hail Mary at the end, somehow still didn't get it to overtime. Crazy game, but 5-4-1 after the dust settles through 2 weeks. So we got a winning record. We got a tiny little profit through 2 weeks. Let's put that to the test here. I got 5 picks for you. I like Detroit at home -3.5 against Atlanta. Atlanta's 2-0, but if you've watched the games, really lackluster offense. I think Ritter is not dynamic at all. They put up 24 and 25 points in those games, and I think they've been very lucky to do so. Their first opponent, Carolina, I think showed tonight, they are terrible. I mean, that is a really bad football team.
I watching that whole game, I was just like, what a stupid idiot who picked them to win this division. They're terrible. I don't even – because I was like, oh, the Saints are good. Saints are going to win the division. And I was like, you know what? I like Carolina's defense. And I think Bryce Young's going to be a lot better than, what they had last year. And then I'm just watching nope, this team is hot garbage.
So we're going Detroit. They're hosting Atlanta. They're only given 3.5. I kind of like that there. I think their offense at least will definitely put up a bunch of points. As long as they can keep Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier bottled up, they should be able to win and cover.
Bijan Robinson is damn good. I mean, obviously that's not a hot take, but I just saw a couple highlights, with Sunday Ticket. A couple runs. Oh my, he's just making guys miss like easily. I just
young LaShawn McCoy is what I'm thinking.
He's damn good. You don't take running backs high like they they say now, but
when he plants that foot and cuts, I mean, that reminds me of young Shady McCoy. It's just he zips, into a cut and then zips right out of it.
It's that specific move. He puts either foot right, left, and then just the defender won't touch him.
Yeah, he goes in a completely different direction. But if you can bottle him up, Ritter is not going to be carving anyone up. So, yeah, he's not very good. So we're going Detroit minus 3.5. Tennessee plus 3.5 at Cleveland. I bet this when it was at 4.5. I think it's moved to 3.5 after the Cleveland game today. So I'm going to give it out at Tennessee plus 3.5. I don't think Tannehill's very good. I don't think Tennessee is all that good, but I have massive concerns about Cleveland. And I think if you're getting 3.5 points, all you got to do is lose by 3 to Cleveland. I think Tennessee can get there. I think Vrabel's a good coach. I think that's a team that they're going to run the ball really effectively. I think Watson is a bit of a tire fire at the moment. I think Cleveland has awful vibes going right now with just Watson at QB, Chubb out for the year, that whole situation with they may bring in Kareem Hunt, another guy with serious off-field issues, to replace Nick Chubb. I mean, it's a tough situation there for Cleveland. I'm going Tennessee plus 3.5. And then a pick that I know you're going to love, Miami minus 6.5 versus Denver. Buy that now before it gets to 7 or 7.5 or 8, because that thing is rocketing up. There's no way Denver's going to go into Miami and win that game. There's no way, right?
I love those games. Like, there's just no way. Just nope. I mean, I don't see it. I'm kind of shocked it's not higher.
Yeah, I thought it would have been higher too. I thought it was going to be 7. When I saw 6.5, I bought it. And then the Chargers-Vikings game opened at 54.5 as the total. It's basically even. It's like Vikings minus 1. I didn't want to take a side on this game, especially as a Vikings fan. I know whoever commits the turnovers in this game, that's who's going to lose, just like the first 2 Vikings games. But I'm going under 54.5 in that game. That's the highest total on the board this week by a mile. And I think the Vikings defense, they've given up, what has it been, 20 and 34 points through 2 weeks. But those have been with the opposing teams getting the ball, 8 more times combined than the Vikings had the ball on offense, thanks to turnovers. So I really think Vikings defense has actually been much better than the numbers indicate. I like them to keep this a low-scoring affair, and I think Brandon Staley's coaching for his job. He's going to do everything he can to try to keep this game low scoring. I'm going to go under 54.5 there. And then Seattle's only minus 4.5 against Carolina. That's the fishiest line I've seen at any point this year through 3 weeks. I expected this game to be 7.5 for Seattle. It's in Seattle. When I saw 4.5, I was like, I have to bet it. Very strange line there. It worries me because I'm like, what do they know that I don't? But I love Seattle minus 4.
Isn't that crazy though? You're like, your mind starts to be like, you're just like, is Geno Smith being arrested for smuggling drugs across the like
what do they know?
I don't think he's injured. Yeah, what do they know?
DK Metcalf may be injured. Maybe that affects the line a little bit, but
there's I mean,
Carolina's not going into.
Seattle.
What's
crazy? It's just I'm no scout, but I feel like it doesn't take that long, especially quarterbacks, to see, I'm not going to say this guy's going to be a bust, but, I text you, I don't see it with Bryce. He doesn't do anything.
120 minutes into his career.
That sounded terrible. I said he doesn't do anything well. That's not true. He doesn't do anything one thing exceptionally.
Right.
They're oh, his thing is his brain. I think that's kind of a crapshoot because I think most players in the NFL are smart players, most of them. So, okay, you can process really well. Well,
so can Burrow, and he just got the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, his team's not very. I know his team's not very good. That's a bit of an overreaction, but I was just I don't see. I guess my point is I see it with Anthony Richardson. If he puts it together with coaching and a team, I think he can be pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields. Nope.
Trey Lance?
Yeah.
Yeah, quick. We've both been like this for a long time, going back to the frickin' Christian Ponder, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert draft, where we're within 3 weeks, we're no. Just straight up.
Even
no.
I remember Seattle when they signed Matt Flynn. They're oh, this guy. And then they Russell, and they're yeah, we're not playing Matt Flynn. It's just nope.
This third round guy pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, that's the You Like That picks of the week. Here we go. Week 3, You Like That picks of the week. Detroit minus 3.5 at home against Atlanta. Tennessee plus 3.5 at Cleveland. Miami minus 6.5 hosting Denver. The Chargers, Vikings under 54.5, and Seattle -4.5 at home against Carolina. Joey, it's time for your Feels Great, baby. Your wildest take you feel best about. You want to talk about something we started off the top of the pod with here, coaching matters.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like a super wild take. I guess my wild take would be like, I think the Rams could win. I mean, I think the Rams could win 10 games. I think they're that good, and I think the biggest reason why is they have a dynamite head coach who, if he wants to coach long enough, is going straight to the Hall of Fame. I mean, I guess you could argue. I mean, I don't know if he's there yet. I know he's got a Super Bowl, but like, got to coach a little bit longer, I think. But yeah, I was just thinking, we were just talking about quarterbacks too. Like, not only does it just matter to like wins and losses, but like it changes people's lives. Like I think Justin Fields wouldn't be that good with anybody, but like, okay, what if he didn't have like, Matt Eberflus and like he had a McVay, he had a Mike McDaniel. Like Tua's life changed because Mike McDaniel was hired. Like forget wins and losses, his life changed. If he stays healthy, he's going to get a couple $100 million contract. He was not getting that if Mike McDaniel's not hired. Same thing with Sean McVay. I mean, he got Jared Goff, to do well. Matthew Stafford's now a Super Bowl champion. Not always money, but the Niners draft Brock Purdy. Kyle Shanahan's changed his life by taking him and make it. Same thing with Anthony Richardson. He gets Shane Steichen. If Anthony Richardson goes to the Bears, does his career just fall off a cliff? I just think Jalen Hurts, wasn't the most, second rounder. He's not a big first round can't miss guy. He has Steichen and Philly. He's now one of the richest guys in the NFL history.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen, I think he would have been good, but he loses Brian Daboll. He clearly isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy with opportunity with coaches. I don't know. Just like, who's to know what Justin Herbert's career looks like if he doesn't have Brandon Staley anchoring him down? I don't know. I just think about that. It's pretty interesting.
The coach quarterback relationship is more important now than it's ever been. And I think that's why almost every head coaching hire from probably 2019 till now has been either a disciple of Sean McVay or an offensive mind, like the good coaching hires, like O'Connell in Minnesota, like Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. It's guys who are going to foster a relationship with a young quarterback or, a young team versus back in the day where you would get like Mike Zimmer guys on the Vikings, 2014 to 2021 teams that were just about hit you in the mouth and I'm a motherfucker and I'm literally going to get up in your face. Like that's that type of coaching, that Belichick Parcells style of coaching is dying out. And all those guys who you just named, McDaniel, McVay, Shanahan, O'Connell, all of these guys are positive people who have
like Pete Carroll's a defensive guy.
Yeah.
But like you said, positive dude. And he's also just really, I think there are some outliers. Like, Pete Carroll is a really good football coach. Offense, defense doesn't, he just.
Yeah, John Harbaugh doesn't look like the happiest guy.
Like John Harbaugh's not scheming up some of these offenses some of these other younger guys are doing, but clearly runs a well-run operation. Like if you're not like an offensive guy, you better be like buttoned up completely. I love DeMeco Ryans, but if he doesn't get CJ Stroud to play well, like I'm not gonna say he's gonna get fired.
When you hire a defensive coach like that, you need to nail the offensive coordinator
exactly,
or you're screwed.
Yeah.
And I don't think Stroud is the guy. I don't think Fields is the guy. I don't think Will Levis, all these guys are the guy. But if they have an offensive coordinator who's legit, we forgot to mention LaFleur up there in Green Bay.
Oh, exactly.
Another guy who's just, he comes in and it's just competent. He's young. He's positive. He gets the players to buy in. There's none of this up in your face nonsense. And it's really paying off for a lot of these guys, and no more than McVay, who, by the way, I saw this stat. Kevin O'Connell's the second youngest coach in the NFL behind Sean McVay, who is still 7 years after his hire, the youngest coach in the NFL. And he could coach another 30 years. Who knows?
It was impressive. Just get back to him with this full take. about him winning. I think I think the Rams win 10 games, and he could win Coach of the Year with this. I still think the roster is, bottom 5 roster in the league. But I mean, he was impressive Sunday. But my takeaway is like I read something that the Shanahan tree obviously started with his dad. They don't really hire outside of the tree. Like it's, it was like his dad, Kyle, then under, his dad in Washington, they famously had Kyle, McVay, and LaFleur all there.
Right.
They all hire their tree. Well, I read that McVay this year said, screw it. And he hired a couple guys from the Patriots, like Belichick tree, like power run game. And like he completely like redid their run game. And, I mean, they ran the ball the first half on the Niners. I mean, it was just like the Niners gave the ball back. The Rams scored 17. It was 17-10 with like just under the 2-minute warning. And the Rams got the ball to start the second half. I'm like, there's a chance we're down 24-10 before we get the ball. It was just like, obviously the Niners put together a drive to tie it. And then, the defense, Steve Wilkes made some adjustments, but yeah, I was just thinking it changed people. I just thought that you like Tua went from, just being compared to Justin Herbert the rest of his career to like, is this guy going to win MVP and be like a $250 million quarterback because they hired this nerd, Mike McDaniel?
Anything's possible when you got Puka Doncic.
Exactly. Well, who I was just thinking, who was Miami? Was Miami thinking about Sean Payton before? Who was the other?
Yes, they were trying to get Payton and
like
Brady.
does Tua mesh with him? I mean, Sean Payton is a Parcells guy.
Yeah,
like he is more like
taskmaster.
Yeah. Like is Tua, who I don't know him, but seems like he fits more with Mike McDaniel than the guy who's going to yell and scream. I mean, he had Brian Flores, who, by all accounts,
disliked him.
Borderline hated him. I mean, some of the stuff was like, but
he wanted to play Fitz.
Like Trevor Lawrence can't miss prospect. He gets Urban Meyer, the bus is off the cliff. Just can't even function. And then they hire Doug Peterson, and it's like, oh, he's fine. Like, he's really good.
Moral of the story is hire young, positive, offensive-minded coaches and do not try to get these, Belichick disciples like Patricia and Judge, and do not try to get these guys from the Parcells.
That's the other thing,
that era's over.
To take it back to Belichick, like this, it's just like, not only do you without Tom, your tree is just terrible. Like
Crennel, Weiss, Mangini, Judge, Bill O'Brien, okay. Patricia, awful. Patricia is right up there with Urban Meyer for worst coaches of recent memory, and Nathaniel Hackett, of course. But Patricia, hated by the players, horrible record, stupid pencil in the ear. Like everything out of New England not related to Tom Brady has been a shit show.
But even that's the Sunday night game. Like the Patriots just look stuck in like the wrong decade.
Yeah.
And Bill is the GM too. Like part of that is like, cool. You drafted Cole Strange. He's a nice guard. You have no weapons. Nothing. I mean, has it been since like Randy Moss? Since you had somebody on the outside?
Oh yeah. They had Brandon Cooks for 1 year. It was pretty good. I mean, it's been nothing but slot receivers for them for forever. And now they're trying to make, Kendrick Bourne and Juju they're playing in the wrong era. You said it perfectly. They're trying to play like they're the 2003 Patriots, and they're like grind it out and make a play here or there. It's like, damn, that is just.
But the thing about Tom too, like obviously Brady is, best to do it. But like even those like, oh, Belichick's a defensive. Those defenses had like Hall of Famers. Like, that could be my feels great baby take every week. Is just like, is Belichick go from the best to the most overrated?
He's just dropping further and further.
Each week, I'm like, okay, like, because like we just mentioned LaFleur had Rodgers. Like, oh, who is this guy without Rodgers? Well, who knows how the career he has? But like, decent.
Yeah, competent.
Like,
pretty wild. Coaching matters, man. You said it off the top, and I think head coach, offensive coordinator matters so much these days.
Last take on the coach, or you could do what the Arizona Cardinals did and And which one of you guys who drove here? And which one of you guys took the bus? Do you see that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Who took the bus? You got that fire in your gut? If you don't, you better light it quick. I love the memes where they put the crickets. It's like James Conner just like
it's like what? Oh my God. Yeah, if you hire a defensive guy, it better be a legit coach, not Jonathan Gannon. I think that was probably a chestnut checkers move by Arizona to try to get Caleb Williams. Pretty smart move there.
And then Caleb quickly said, like, I might stay here.
He's like, no, thanks. Especially if Gannon's the coach. I'm good. All right. Great recap of week 2 and week 3 picks. I'm proud of this one. Let's close the pod. One thing I wanted to do as summer comes to an end is I always have this debate with my wife, Jamie, about the seasons. So I wanted to power rank the seasons just to get it off my chest. I feel like this list is unimpeachable. You can disagree with me if you want, but I think this is the perfect list. The best seasons in order. Number 1, fall for sure. Football, good weather, culminates with Thanksgiving. Love the fall. Second, spring, also great weather. You got March Madness, Masters, baseball starts. If you're a golfer like me, you get out and golf again after winter not having the best conditions. You're like, yes, spring is coming, baseball's coming, golf is coming. This is the best. Then summer. Obviously, you have long days. You can do whatever you want after work because you got a bunch of daylight. I'm not a huge fan of the heat growing up in Northern California, but I'll take summer and then winter dead last.
If we do have any people who actually live, outside of California, but I hate the heat. People like in Texas or where he'll be like, heat, what is it, like 90? Although LA gets pretty hot.
Yeah, not as hot as Houston. I think I talked to some folks that were in Houston a couple weeks ago. They said it never got below 108. I was like, that sounds fun. But yeah, that's my list. Okay, fall, spring, summer, winter.
We can do that, which I'll answer that too. But I'd even you don't have to do all 12, but what are the best sports months of the year?
Oh, that would be a good one. I ranked the months not sports related with Jamie the other day, and she was literally, our lists were almost exactly opposite. Almost exactly opposite. All right, give us your seasons.
My seasons, just the two that come to the top. Number 1, I agree, fall. It is the football, the weather. I guess the only big negative, especially when being in school, is school's back if you're in school. But I mean, we're older, yeah, I mean, fall is illy, especially if you're into pumpkin spice lattes. I guess those are back.
Yeah,
plaid flannels are back.
Pumpkin patches, orchards. Oh yeah, yeah.
Like you said, Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. Dead last though. I don't know who's second. I go back and forth second and third, but dead last is summer. I hate summer. I hate it. It's like you said, way too hot. Unless you're a big baseball fan, there's nothing really going on other than, golf. You get to golf, you said, that's cool. But, the heat for me is so bad. Yeah, that I hate. I've always hated summer.
So I had summer third. You have it fourth. It's tough.
I'll go spring. I'll go spring second. I think like you did. There's more sports that I like winter. You get playoff race in football.
You get hockey.
Hockey's in full swing, but hockey games don't really matter that time. Spring, like you said, you do get you get the Masters. Hockey's still on if you're in, and then you get spring. You count the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would do. And if we did months, for me, number 1 is October.
Yes, that's far and away number 1.
I mean, you got everything.
Yeah.
In October, the only thing you don't get is golf, but October.
I like October, November, September, December, all the football months, and then March for.
Yeah.
Well, probably, I guess I would say April because the Masters is the first week in April. So, yeah, April because you get the end of March Madness, the start of MLB.
You know what's hilarious? I was gonna say, what's the worst one? It'll be July, and then my son will be I was born in July.
That was a good month for you.
Yeah. No, I would be it was a good day.
No,
Yeah, one day.
literally,
The whole month?
Jamie's listing off her favorite months, and it's literally, well, let's see, August, June, July, May. And
What's
I
her
was like,
reason?
what? Because she just loves the warm weather, and the long days. And I'm like, well,
Do you guys like playing pickleball when it's 900 degrees outside?
exactly. That's the point I'm making is like, give me that nice crisp fall air where you can like go out and exercise and you don't feel like you're dying out there. I don't know.
You know
The
what
summer
another
months are
reason?
at the bottom.
The reason why summer sucks ass is PG&E bills are like $700.
Oh, we just got our energy bill today, our highest ever, because it encompassed 2 months.
Ours was almost 700.
Absolute. I saw that and I was like, that broke our record by like $80. I was like, God, what a nightmare. Summer overrated.
It is. It is.
As kids, we loved it. Okay, you're out of school, you get to hang out with your buddies all the time and play sports and play video games. We liked it as kids, but we're adults now. Summer.
Yeah, we don't get it off.
No. Yeah. Screw summer.
I'm just like, I'm 31 years old. Like, when's my like 2.5 months off?
I work a job that it's obviously year round, but the busy times are seasonal. So for me, March, April, and May are extremely busy, and then September, October, November are extremely busy. All the other months are relatively manageable. But even though those are the times of the year where I am just slammed with work, they're still my favorite months. The weather's good. Sports are on. You can go out and do whatever you want. None of this like, oh, it's 105 outside, we got to stay in, or none of this like, oh, it's pouring rain outside, we got to stay in. Like, give me spring and fall all day long, man. And I'm sticking to my guns there. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We love doing these pods with you every week. We like the feedback we get on YouTube and TikTok, and appreciate everybody following and sharing and shooting me texts after they listen to a pod and saying, how could you say that? Like, we appreciate that so much. Thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back to recap week 3 next week and give you some more picks for week 4. This was another edition of the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. We will see you next week.